that we will share it with you. So that if there's anything that you want to ask questions or there's something you didn't write down on your notes, you'll be able to actually look at the presentation. We will be sending that via email. All right. So I'm going to shift off. My name is Susan Davison. I'm a key account specialist with Central Coast Community Energy. I want to say thank you for joining us today. We're very pleased. I want to introduce Lena Williams, our manager of Energy Account Services. She will kick us off. And so Lena, it's your turn.
Hey, good morning, everyone. My name is Lena Williams. I'm the manager of Energy Account Services. I also feel like before we continue, it would be, I'd like to also introduce our second presenter, who is Tony Pastore, who will take the bulk from our energy programs team. But I want to give you just first, thank you for joining us. I know everyone's been really busy. We spoke at our previous key account working group, getting questions from folks about potential demand response programs. And as we actually move forward with what we have outlined, we wanted to get feedback, of course, from you, as well as share out the overview and the design of our pilot, so that we can move forward with larger programs in the future. Susan, can you advance to the next slide? I think we're able to.
Actually, Tony is actually going to advance to the next slide.
Oh, Tony's got the slides. Got it.
Got the slides, yep.
So just generally, the goal of our program is in the form of a demand response program is, of course, to reduce the grid stress, to increase grid reliability, and of course, reward customers for participating in the pilot. You may be involved and engaged in other programs, but this one is actually the first on our side as Central Coast Community Energy is your premier energy provider that is actually supporting the reduction of generation and the grid demand. So next slide, sorry. I don't know, Tony, if you're advancing. Sorry. So if you received an invitation specifically to this event, it is because we identified your organization as one that actually has at least one SA that meets the requirements of this pilot program. So we did send out invitations to specific groups of commercial customers, industrial customers, and agricultural customers, and to each of our member agencies for the purposes of actually getting some active participation in this program in our pilot period. The summer readiness program, there's no penalties for participation. So it does not, even though it may overlap with other programs that you are in, you're not going to be penalized in those programs since we looked at and identified service agreements and accounts that actually would not overlap or have requirements that made them ineligible for participation. So it wouldn't impact you there. And then also you'll see as Tony goes over the program details itself, that there is no penalty if, for example, your facility can't reduce load. So the goal is to make it all positive, thank those who are able to participate, and of course get feedback from those of you who both participate or find themselves unable to participate. Next slide. So there's up to 10 events anticipated. Tony will go into more detail about what is considered a qualifying event day and how you'll be notified, but the program period actually kicked off July 15th and will end September 30th. We are looking at event days and through specifically load reduction in the hours of 4 p.m. to 9 p.m. So even though you may participate in programs that have different time periods that are covered, the hours that we're going to be evaluating and looking at the analysis from are between 4 to 9 on the non-holiday event days. And the incentive will be 1 kilowatt hour of net consumption reduced during that event day, and Tony will talk about how that's determined. And there's a maximum of $5,000 per customer per event. So no matter what happens, you can't go over that $5,000 per event. And as mentioned previously, there are no penalties if you do not participate in a particular event. We are going to be correlating our event days with the peak day pricing event days, and those are usually the hottest days over the summer. There have been a couple events already called by PG&E. We'll be looking at anything that is from July 15th going forward. And without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to Tony, who's going to get into the larger details of the program.
Thank you, Lena, and thanks, Susan. Thanks for the introduction and start of this program. So, and again, hello to all of our customers who are attending today and others. So this is, as Lena mentioned, this is a new program type for Central Coast Community Energy. This is our first foray essentially into demand response programming. This program comes as a result of the CPUC's request to all of the load serving entities in California, including Central Coast Community Energy, all of the other CCAs, and of course the IOUs, PG&E, SCE, SDG&E, et cetera. So the CPUC, as a result of a variety of grid stress events that most of you are probably very well aware of, causing different kinds of outages throughout the state, the CPUC has requested that the CCAs launch some kind of a program to help reduce that grid stress. And so we have budgeted $200,000 to this program to, again, help reduce the grid stress and reward customers for their participation in helping us to do that. So the Summer Readiness Program will allow each of the enrolled participants to have one SAID, that's the service account identification number. And so that basically translates to 1 meter. So one of your meters would be enrolled. As Lena mentioned, that's automatic enrollment. The customer is welcome at any time to choose not to participate. And so all you need to do is just let us know. We have an email address at the end of the slide deck here, but it's info@3ce.org. So at any time, if you choose to not want to participate, we understand. However, as Lena mentioned, there are no penalties for participation or lack of participation or sort of low participation. We are only rewarding customers for demonstrated usage reduction. And so we're going to get into what that looks like. Obviously, customers or participants must be customers, must be also able to receive an alert via email. This is quite important. We'll be sending out day ahead and day of notices via email and want to be sure that our participating customers are aware that those events are happening, 24 hours in advance and then on the day of. So you have plenty of notice to reduce your usage between 4 and 9. Meter data must be available. So ideally that's what we would call smart meter data or MV90 possibly. Our data provider collects electronic meter data from PG&E. PG&E still essentially owns your meter. So we collect the meter data from PG&E, or our third-party data manager does. And then they will use that data to calculate your baseline and usage. And we'll get into that a little bit more in just a minute. So again, all of the regular 3C choice or 3C prime rates are applicable as per normal. Also, if you have any questions during the webinar here, please feel free to write them down. I think the chat looks like it's got some activity, so maybe that's a good place to do that. There is also a Q&A. They are sort of comparable, you can write it down in the chat or the Q&A really. But it looks like the chat has more activity, so feel free to chat there or ask us questions and I'll try to respond to them as quickly as I can during the presentation. Okay. So Ineligible customers, just to be clear, net energy metering customers, so behind the meter solar, et cetera, are not eligible. Standby tariff customers participating in a program called Emergency Load Reduction Program are not eligible to participate. And I think this is a typo here. If you're, oh, this is generation side. So basically, if you're participating doing some other kind of either fossil fuel or other rotating generator on site, that's not eligible for this program either. And we can answer your specific questions on that if you have any. And again, customers may elect to not participate at any time. Just contact either info@ or your key account specialist. So basically, as I mentioned, participating customers will receive a day ahead and a day of email. Text messages are available. And so at the end here, we'll get into a little bit about how we'll be collecting your phone numbers that you'd like to use for text messages. I also want to point out here that many facilities will have multiple people. There could be several individuals who are collaborating on energy use, facility operations, and so on. So we would like to be able to alert each of those folks. So feel free to give us, provide their contact info, and we'll alert each of them. Basically, the program is pretty straightforward. So on the event day, the customers will be asked to reduce their energy usage from 4 to 9 p.m. And we recommend that you're ready well before 4 p.m. To do that. So in order to be ready before 4 p.m. on the day of the event, PG&E has prepared this event day action plan. So this is a link to that action plan, and we'll provide you with that. We'll provide you with that link as well. This will be in the slide deck. And Susan, if you want, you could paste that link in the chat, please. I
think we might have lost Tony's audio.
Ivan, oh, there you are, Tony. You're coming back in. Okay.
Sorry.
Yep.
Yeah, we lost you for a second.
I apologize. I have no idea what happened.
I did have time to type that long email address in the chat box. So thank you for giving me time.
Okay, so let me share my screen again. Okay, are we back?
We are back. Thank you very much.
Okay, I apologize. I don't know what happened. So yeah, so the final report will be issued before the end of 2021, and that's when the bill credits will arrive. So this is basically a cumulative bill crediting that will take place at one time, and we hope that'll be completed by the end of 2021. So probably on your December or January bill, you'll see the credits. Maybe at this point, Susan, we could take a look to see what questions we have, or you could read off maybe one or two of the questions that I could answer.
So the first question is, do you have to establish a commitment of kilowatt reduction that we could actually tell them or provide that information to them?
Great question. So sounds like the person asking the question has participated in other programs, perhaps CBP. Our program does not require a commitment. So no commitment required. There'll be no monthly nominations. This is strictly for the customer to decide either day ahead or day of what amount you might be able to reduce your usage. And because you mentioned kilowatts, I will mention kilowatt hours. So this program is using the measure of kilowatt hours to determine the incentives. Lena mentioned earlier, and it's in the earlier slide, that our incentive is $1 per kilowatt hour reduced. So yeah, so no nominations and no obligations. And I hope that answers your question. Susan, next one, please.
So someone indicated that my typing is bad, and so the link that we have provided them doesn't work. I will make sure that the link is active. We'll put it in the chat box again, but I'll make sure that it is an active link. So when you get the PDF, you can click on the link and actually get to the page you want. Okay.
Okay, so I just pasted it in there as well. We'll see if that works.
Thank you. And
You're
then
welcome.
there was another question. Who do we contact to provide a cell number for text? And so Lena, would you talk a little bit about texting and the California rules and things like that? Because that's a side question.
Yes. So we're going to actually send a separate form for registering for the text alerts. And the reason for that is because in California, text alert notifications have to be by enrollment, but they have to be an opt-in, not an you drop everyone in and they opt out. So once we actually have that built out, which would be in the next day or two, then we'll be able to send that out to everyone. And those who wish to be contacted via text, we'll be able to add whoever that point of contact is and the phone number for the text alerts. Otherwise, you'll still be contacted via email on a day ahead, and if necessary, also by phone.
Thank you, Lena. Also, would you talk a little bit, the survey was dropped into the chat box. Would you talk a little bit about the what we put in the survey? Because
yes, so this is just
on how it works.
Yes, so this is just the enrollment survey. The participation, of course, your system or your service agreement is actually automatically enrolled, but you can use this form if you wish to elect not to participate, but we're also asking for everyone to go ahead and complete it so that we can have verification of who the primary point of contact should be for notifications. And then if there's more than one person, there'll be an option to add a second person. And then also what that contact information is.
Thank you, Lena. And Tony, another question. You talk here about participant reducing energy use from 4 p.m. to 9 p.m. What happens if, due to the type of business that I have, I cannot reduce at 4 o'clock?
Sure, it's a great question, and thanks for asking it. So let me scroll down and we'll dive right into that. I'll answer that question here in this slide. So basically, the way this program works is very similar to other demand response type programs. We will basically, when there's an event called, our third-party data manager will do a look back. They do we'll be creating a baseline, what we call the baseline for each of the customers. And the baseline is based on the 10-day or 10 business day, non-event day look back, looking back at that customer's usage between 4 and 9 for each of those 10 non-business, non-event days. From that 10-day look back, we'll determine the average usage between 4 and 9. So that becomes the baseline, is that average usage between 4 and 9 over the previous 10 non-business, non-event days. Once we have that baseline, that gives us essentially a number to compare the event usage. So then we take a look at the event day and we look at the usage between 4 and 9. That will be essentially summed. So that'll be the total usage between 4 and 9. And then we'll subtract that from the average, from the baseline, and we'll have a number. So that number, let's see, we have a couple scenarios here that we kind of teed up. So that number becomes your reduction. That's the number of kilowatt hours reduced. So here, and so let me just touch base on the on how that works. So between 4 and 9 is a 5-hour period. So for example, I think the customer said, what if we can't reduce our usage at 4 p.m.? So let's just say between 4 and 5, you're not able to reduce your usage because that's let's say the typical shift run ends at 5 p.m., or even if it ended at 6 p.m., you have that window there where you just cannot reduce usage. But then you're able to reduce usage for the second half, let's say, of the event period. If the reduction in usage during the half of the event period equates to less than the 10-day look back average, then you would have a usage reduction. So it's really looking at that cumulative, or the sum of those hours from 4 to 9, what that total usage is compared to that average 4 to 9 usage from the 10-day look back.
Thank you, Tony, for that. So it's possible to get a payment if you actually reduce within a period across that average. So thank you. Thank you for saying
Exactly.
that. Appreciate it. Okay.
Yep.
All right. And somebody else actually asked the question that's based upon, what is the baseline used for comparison to show that you reduced? You actually answered this one also live.
Sure.
Okay.
And if that question comes up again, feel free to write it down. If somebody else wants to ask about baseline again, I'm happy to repeat that. I know especially for folks who are new to baselining and demand response, there can be a lot of questions, and it's somewhat complex and a little bit hard to understand for sure. So happy to answer any of those questions.
All right. Next question is, when will an event be? You talked about PDP, and can we have the link again, or we'll make sure it's in the PowerPoint that it's a live link, but when will an event be called? Help us understand that.
Sure. So PG&E here, I will also paste into the chat one other link real quick. This is the link to PG&E's, okay, hosts and panelists. Oh, I see. I need to click that. I need to click that. Okay, so the link I just pasted is to PG&E's peak day pricing events. And so you can see there a history of events as well. You can see a forecast of events if you scroll to the bottom of that page. And I can also bring that page up on the screen here. But basically, PG&E's PDP events or peak day pricing events occur typically when the average temperature across PG&E's service territory reaches 98 degrees. I'll give you, since we do have a little bit of time here today to talk through some stuff, one of the reasons that temperature is so important in determining events is because as the ambient air temperature increases, the ability of the power lines to move electricity is reduced for a variety of different reasons. It's the power lines themselves, as well as the other equipment that's part of the electric distribution system and in the transmission system. So ambient air temperature has a significant impact on the ability of the system to deliver electricity. Also, typically when it gets hot, people turn up their air conditioning. And so there's more energy demand or being demanded. And that further complicates the issue of the temperature. So PG&E uses a formula that they have to determine these peak day pricing events. And so you can see if Lena, if you want, you could nod your head and I could show that page if you like. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and drag that page onto my screen so everyone can see it. This is the peak day pricing page from PG&E. Oh, I'll click off the chat. And here you can see some of the information about peak day pricing events. And again, one thing I want to be clear about is that if you're already participating in another PG&E program, as far as we're aware, we have no issue with that. You can still participate in our program. I just want to make that clear. But here you can see the forecast temperatures for PG&E. And again, this is essentially service territory wide. And then if you click this button here, you can look at the event day history. And if you're tracking temperatures for your facility, you could go back and look at, hey, on these different days, this is when those events occurred. So we also anticipate only 10 events for our program this year. As I mentioned very early on in the presentation, we have a fixed budget for this program of $200,000. So once we spend that money, if we spend that before the end of before September 30th, then the program will end essentially, and so forth. So
Tony, we will make
Yes.
sure that the page that you're showing on the screen will be included in the PowerPoint presentation as a live link. So thank you for that.
okay, yeah, great. And I pasted that in the chat as well, Susan,
We got it. Okay.
the link.
Do
Okay,
you want, all right. And we have another question. You want another question?
sure.
Okay. Is there any way to get a check instead of a bill credit? Because you talked about bill credit before the end of the year.
Yeah, unfortunately, as far as I'm aware, we can put in the request, but as far as I'm aware, this program will receive a bill credit only, which is kind of like a check, but it's a check paid directly to your bill. So yeah, it's scheduled to be a bill credit only.
All right, we're going to have a couple that talk to other programs. This seems it is like PG&E's ELRP program. Is that safe to say? And what's the difference?
Sure. Yeah, ELRP is a special program that was developed by or essentially mandated by the PUC. So this program from us, the Summer Readiness Program, really is is more. It could be considered like ELRP in some, but it is not totally comparable. It's
Okay.
I would say similar. It's a demand response program, so it pays the customer to reduce their usage. In
And
this case, per kilowatt hour usage.
thank you. And I do believe there's some things that are like the BIP that are on the PG&E T&D side, which someone can participate in, and they can participate in the Summer Readiness on the Gen side with us. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And if so, are there any events likely to happen during BIP events? Because you talked about PDP as being the events.
Yeah, so this is a good question. So we are utilizing for this program, and every program uses, well, not that every program uses a different alert signal, but each program has a specific alert or event signal. And some programs, some customers on the call may be familiar with the CPUC's Flex Alert. For example, Flex Alert is a statewide alert. It goes across from north to south, east to west, the whole state. So we don't use the Flex Alert as our signal for an event. PG&E, because all of these customers are in the PG&E service area, is that right? Or we do have a few in the. These are all PG&E customers.
Correct.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay, so because we're going through some other enrollments, folks, and so we have some SCE customers coming in, but not until October. So in any event, we're using a signal from PG&E, which is their PDP or PK pricing signal for this program. That's what we've selected.
All right, next question, Tony. With baselining, is weather taken into account? I think you talked about statewide stuff.
Yeah, so the baseline only looks at usage. It doesn't look at temperature.
Great answer. Thank you. All right, and a clarification question. Is the program based on per meter or per customer or per account?
Great question. So this is essentially, we use the SAID as the meter identification number, essentially. So it's not the meter number itself, it's the SA number. As you may be aware, PG&E will sometimes change meters out for different reasons. For example, if a meter has a technical malfunction, the meter might be swapped out, but the SAID remains consistent for that point of connection. So we use the SAID. It's a rough proxy for a meter, and so this is based on meters. And yeah, so it's each meter would have. Maybe that question was relative to the cap of $5,000 per essay per event.
Well,
So
and
that
we
would be-
do have some customers, especially some key account customers, who actually have SAIDs that are just on one bill. Let's say one SAID, one bill. We have others who have quite a few SAIDs on one account and multiple pages to the bill. So it's really clear about it's not the account number, it's not the customer, it's actually the SAID that this ties to directly.
That's correct.
And at the end of the presentation, there'll be Gabe and my information plus the info at email. So questions about what SAID, we can actually communicate that with each customer. All right, we got one more question, and then I'll end back to the presentation that we keep interrupting you on.
That's okay.
Okay.
The questions are probably the most important part. So
I agree.
please keep the questions coming. We really want to answer them for you.
What would prevent someone from signing up to this program during an event and then an event day happens, they don't change their operations, but if they happen to use less kilowatts that day, would they still get paid? If they're
That's
enrolled?
correct. Yep. If the SAID is enrolled in the program, then sort of regardless of whether it was intentional or unintentional, if the data shows reduced usage during the 4 to 9 period as compared to the baseline average, then that's an incentive. That'll show the reduction, and then the incentive will be calculated based on that reduction.
And Lena, could you talk for just a moment, or you and Tony talk for a moment about the goal? Because this is a pilot. And as a pilot, our goal is to gather information. And so we want to know did they intentionally load reduce? Did they happily load reduce by accident? It's like, we would love to learn what's happening. So, because this is important for next year's program. So talk a bit about that.
Yeah, so you're 100% hit the nail on the head. The goal, of course, is to obtain as much data as possible so that we can make sure that we're building out meaningful programs going forward. The key accounts team is actually working with Tony and his team to build a post-event survey that'll just be a handful of questions to get feedback on whether or not you were able to actively reduce load, or if there was some other reason that load may have been reduced, or if you weren't able to participate at all, right? And why that might be. So that's something that you will get from us as we go through after event days, just so that we can get that information and build something out that's even bigger and better, right, going forward.
And that actually ties into a question that we were asked this morning about a agency that said, we have a meter that's tied to a library, and the library has been closed down because of COVID. And so they were concerned that the low usage would affect their baseline averaging. And we told them to wait a couple of weeks and the numbers would change. So we want to say, be patient. We want you participating in this program. We know that it may not happen every day or every event. So, all right, Tony, no more questions. I think you're free to chat again.
Okay, great. Well, I'll just add a couple comments here on those on that last couple topics. One is that yes, the baseline is a very important, obviously, metric, right? Because we're going to sum that baseline, or to create the baseline, we're going to sum the 10 prior days usage. And if for whatever reason the facility has reduced usage during one or more of those days, and that, let's just say brings the baseline usage down, then that baseline is the number that we use. And that methodology of a 10-day look back is essentially a standard methodology for DR program operations throughout the state, really throughout the country. So we're happy to take feedback on that as well from customers. So if a customer says, well, hey, I read about a program somewhere that uses a different methodology for determining the baseline, we're happy to incorporate that feedback into our future program designs, certainly. It is designing these DR type programs presents quite a number of challenges. Participating in them as a customer obviously can present some challenges. So again, one of the things that we really want to hearken to as a cornerstone of this program is that there are no penalties. So you're automatically enrolled, but whether you participate, whether you try to participate or not, is, you will not be penalized in any way. Not from our side. There will be no additional, bill charges or anything like that. Our plan is, if you're able to show a reduction, you get credit, and we try to keep it real simple and positive in that way. This is just a simple graphic showing essentially the day before the event. The notifications will be sent. The day of the event, notifications will be sent. And then after the event, we will reach out to you to ask you a few questions about your participation. Again, every aspect of this, as has been mentioned, is important elements for feedback from customers. So please let us know what you think. Please let us know if you know of other programs that you prefer. Feel free to tell us about your business operation and why this does or doesn't work for you and what might work better. We're really wide open to getting your input. I think Lena mentioned also, we're also trying to gather this information for ourselves as well as the state, the California Public Utilities Commission, as we continue to operate in an environment where the utility grid itself is quite aged, as most of us know. And so within the confines of that grid and increasing electricity usage, what can we do to help stabilize the grid so that we avoid outages, which really serves all of the citizens of the state. So again, your feedback and participation is welcome. Quick caveat here, the program changes. We do reserve the right to change the program at any time. We will definitely let you know if we change the program at any time. But for now, we're pretty well set on what we've described. And again, love to get your feedback. So this is just a quick summary slide. Basically what we've already shared. Again, we anticipate 10 events between the 15th of July and September 30th. Those events will take place between 4 and 9, non-holiday days only. The incentive will equal $1 per kilowatt hour of demonstrated reduced usage during the events, and a maximum of $5,000. That should say per SAID per event. Apologies, customers should be replaced with SAID. And again, no penalties for participation. Yeah, Susan, any other questions or comments that we should consider?
I just typed in a note to ask everybody to say, please feel free to put any more questions you might have in the Q&A box. And so on the screen, you actually see the name, email, and phone number of your key account reps. So please feel free to reach out to us. We're hoping to hear that each one of you is going to participate. We look forward to supporting you as you participate. We look forward to answering your questions because that just makes it a better program. And so, Lena, anything you would like to add at this time?
So I am dropping the enrollment survey again into the chat. Someone mentioned that they may not have been able to open it. Hopefully this goes through this time. I was able to open it on my end. Please utilize that if you can, just to let us know that we have the correct point of contact to send our notifications to, and if there's anyone that we should add to our outbound contact list for notifications. And then there will be a separate email with regard to getting set up with text alerts if you would like to receive text alerts. I do want to thank everyone, though, for jumping on and joining us this afternoon. I know there were a lot of questions that everyone had. There will be an email, a follow-up email to this meeting that has a copy of the presentation, an informational one sheet, and also a link to the survey again in the event that you weren't able to get through here. So thank you so much for joining us. And I know Tony will close us out.
Lena, one more question.
Oh, yes.
Before Tony, sorry, Tony, one more question. It'd be good to know the contact information we have. So we're actually asking the customers, individuals on this call, to actually give us the contact information they would like, because he says, I want to know who in my organization is being notified, and how do we modify, let's say someone's on vacation or something, how do we modify the contact information during this program term?
So good question. So right now, the person who received the invitation to this webinar would be the only person that we have listed. If there's another point of contact or another email for billing information on the PG&E account, there might be an alert sent there, but usually that's not the appropriate person, which is why we're asking for the completion of the survey if there's someone else, because this will be for this program only. We are not making any changes regarding the primary point of contact on the PG&E account. So just to clarify, the person who received the invitation to the webinar is the only person that we right now have listed, other than the person listed as the PG&E bill point of contact. So if there's somebody else in your operations or facilities that should be notified or notified in your absence, that's who we'd want you to add into the contact list.
We did also include a second line item for a second point of contact too, knowing that it is summer. And so if you want to fill that out, that would be good. All right, that is it for questions. Tony, you're up.
Okay, thanks, Susan. Thanks, Lena. I did post again in the chat the enrollment survey, which asks for that information that Lena was just talking about. So feel free to click on that link, and then you can list the names and contact info for the folks that you would like to be notified. I think that's basically it. I'll just click back here to the review. If anybody has any further questions, we'll give it a couple minutes. Susan, maybe let's see, we still have, okay, so we've lost a few folks, but if anybody else has any other questions, we'll just give it a couple minutes before we sign off.
We have individuals in the chat box saying thank you for a great presentation, Tony and Lena.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Our pleasure.
We will make sure that the information that's in the chat box and such is included in the presentation, so that when you get a thank you email for attending today, you'll get everything that you need, from contact information to fill out to the actual presentation to live links in the PDF. And then feel free to reach back out. You have key account specialists that you're connected with. We are here to actually serve you and make this program work. Look forward to spending summer readiness with you. Thank you very much.
Bye, everybody.
Goodbye, everybody. Have a good day.
Thank you again. Thanks so much.